Alright, welcome back to my very sexy chair. It's ergonomic, as we mentioned. I've got my OJ. We're keeping it casual today. As my 2 weeks in LA Spanish. It shall become a word eventually. In the grand scheme of things, casual. Alright. Let's have a look at this one. This new clip. I have two, one little shorter clip and another longer one. One of the key things we're going to look at is creating those secondary beats, creating those false negatives, creating that sort of off the groove moments, those deliberate moments where you're going, as the groove's going, you just very aggressively just stop it for a split second and then cut back into the groove. So let's have a look at this first clip and break it down. Let's search it one more time without the the volume coming in the way. Okay, sync. Yep, 1, 2. Okay, yep. Season 1, breakdown 7 was a pain in the butt. Was a pain because I had two separate clips of this. And then I left this to just film, and then syncing up with that second sort of cut that I did was, oh my goodness, it was like cutting and pasting and trying to put this in there, put that in there. It was just a nightmare. So I'm glad that one's over. I'm glad that one was just it. Okay. So you can see here, we really pounded down, okay? And what you might not notice here is a bit of a sort of, magician sort of trick where we're playing the next song, right? We're playing that cue point, and then what? Really pounding down on the effect. Now, this can be any effect that you choose to play, but you want something that has that very quick repetitive cycle, so that trance effect, for example. It can be another example, using the pad effects. Something that creates a rapid sort of grab and repetition. That's what you're looking for. And we apply it for a certain amount of time. It gets you off the groove. The two songs connect in that point, and then we turn the fader down, the first one, and the second one's in, and you're into the next song. Some good examples of this, when to approach this, is when you have songs that are a little more alternative, dance pieces, like this one that's indoor that has a few more of those breaks. Those sweep ups, bit of a reggae sort of beat underneath, going off that beat quickly before then and having that sort of sweep in. That's a really cool part of the mix you can incorporate in. So again, we're looking at just practice and looking at pieces that you can incorporate into your music that work well with different songs. So when you're listening your headphones to that cue point for this song, these are things you should think about. It's like, okay, can I apply this type of, can I use that sort of off groove effect for this song? Okay, and usually for more alternative styles of music, you can be a lot more creative and you have a lot more flexibility. For example, in the Cyberpunk Utopia series, I feel a lot more comfortable in my style of mixing because it's very forgiving. The style of music is a little more aggressive and it's very forgiving, and you can switch between songs, you can add pitch effects and all the stuff I like to do is a lot more forgiving. But when I get into moments when it's like the synth wave and pop wave and all that kind of 80s inspired stuff, pop rock and all that kind of stuff, it's just a lot more information. Like we mentioned, you're doing with more pop style sort of music. There's so much you can do. Sometimes you just have to wait for a song to finish, or you play it, you're playing it from the last chorus or playing the second verse, these are some things you can do, but it's a bit more limiting in what you can do, because if you mix too fast, it doesn't really work. And doing more classical style of transitions, classical mixing style benefit that type of music. So it's just listening to the music and really seeing if that music's gonna really be reciprocal in what you want to do. If you're trying to do this, with like I mentioned, it might work, but it's a little slower in nature, and yeah. So there's some considerations to have. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that little quick clip there of another example of creating those sort of, I like to call them sort of secondary sort of pockets of off the groove moments, where, you're keeping the groove and then, you cut it for that split second. In this situation, we have both songs playing for a very short amount of time, and then we cut out and we bring in the next song. There's just a very quick way to create another transition. And then you blur that moment when the song is coming in. So in this situation, I don't really notice when the second songs come in, and it just creates a unique moment in your mix. What else? That's it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so like I just mentioned, we're dealing with more cyberpunk style music, more a little aggressive. You have this sort of big sort of orchestral moments, like boom, bam, boom, like the Hans Zimmer type stuff. You're adding these sort of crush effects to it, just to dirty it up a little bit, but playing with it musically, right? So not just you're just sweeping through. So you're musically sweeping through. You're creating an arc for the effect. And you're creating those unique moments. You're creating the little pockets where you can create your own signature in the mix. And that's what we're doing here. Another thing you notice is sometimes, we'll get... I was hoping to get in a little bit later, but we'll touch on it quickly and we'll come back to it. The adjustment of the tempo, okay? So when you are off the sync, okay, and you are allowing yourself to manually adjust, okay, you can maintain the pitch, right? Or you can turn the pitch off. So one of the great things here is you can maintain the correct key of the song while decreasing the tempo. You won't necessarily detune the song if you don't want to, okay? Which is a very powerful feature, and this capability to maintain the tune of the song, maintain the tone and the pitch of the song while you're heavily turning down the tempo, which really puts this equipment at that sort of price tag where it is, because doing something like this is very powerful, especially live. It's a great piece of tech. This is one aspect where we're looking at the creating those multiple effects. Okay, so we have that for the crush, but then we can also lower the tempo. Okay, so it doesn't have to be just vroom vroom. It can be vroom vroom. You're lowering tempo, extending out that effect, and bringing it back in. And if you want to go super crazy with it, you can allow the pitch to change as you're lowering the tempo, and then you can create even more wilder effects. But you always want to be careful with something like that you bring it back to the tempo that you want to work with. Yeah, but you can do it musically. It's not that big of an issue. You do it musically and you bring it back up to the tempo, and you detune and bring it back up. Let me just double check the correct terminology for that. Yeah. So on the decks, what I'm referring to is it's labeled as master tempo. Okay, so you are able to turn that off, and then that will allow you to adjust the tempo. So when you're at 130 and you have this functionality on, when you have the master tempo on, it will maintain the key of the song for you. Okay, it'll maintain whatever is happening, right? And you can detune from 130 to 120, etc., and it will keep it there. Okay, it won't pitch it down or pitch it up. Okay, but with this off, you're able to have that pitch functionality. Okay, and as you're lowering the tempo, it essentially stretches it out. Okay, so you're not working with 130 BPM. You're stretching it out, and you're basically not quantizing, and you're being able to completely stretch that out, and it's really cool. Some of the stuff you can work with. You know, Ableton's a master of this. I feel that Ableton's really king. We made it what it is today because of that functionality. Really having that quantization ability to maintain and chop it up and then turn it off, and then you're maintaining that structure and being able to manipulate the stems in that fashion, and really have the ability to use very wild, aggressive cuts and edits of audio. That's really what really appealed to me when I first got into it, compared to a lot of other ones like Pro Tools, for example. You can do some really awesome stuff, recording and stuff like that, but really getting into the minutia of really attacking what you have available in your stem, and Ableton's king of that. And you can do some wild stuff, vocal chops and etc. It's really powerful. But that combination of the two here is a really, really versatile effect that you can do. And I do this quite a lot. I really like to tune the song down to create, perhaps like a super reverb, detuned sort of vibe, and then bring it back up, or like, working with effects, you can turn the tempo down and really accentuate those sort of, orchestral moments in songs. So yeah, very cool, and at least I think it's cool, and versatile approach that you can apply to a range of different music.